A celebration of Italian culture will take place November 2nd and 3rd. It's called Idea Boston, and it's organized by the independent bookstore in the North End, I Am Books. To tell us about the event is the store's president, Nicola Orichuia. Thank you very much for being with us, Nicola.
Thank you, Chris.
So you've had the store for 3 years. How did you get the idea for the festival?
So basically the festival is what we do in the store every day, just on a festival platform. We really thought it would be great, since we've been doing events and other cultural gatherings at the store, it would be great to highlight that in a different format, concentrate in 2 days with multiple events. So maybe that could attract people who maybe won't be able to come to the North End on a regular basis, because the festival won't take place at the bookstore, which is too small for a festival. It's actually going to take place at the Dante Alighieri building in Cambridge, just a few steps away from Kendall Square.
Well, part of the lineup are these academic specialists, but I also noticed some of the topics, at least 3 of them involved immigration. What kind of ground are you trying to cover now?
We are, first and foremost, a literary and cultural festival. A lot of what we want to discuss is the matter of identity, what it means to be an American of Italian heritage today. What does it mean to be an Italian immigrant to the United States like myself? There are many identities, I think, within the American reality, within the American experience, no matter where our ancestors come from. And I think it's an ongoing conversation. So we want to make sure we offer that to the people who come through others who are either studying this topic, have written about it, or are living it themselves.
Well, you come from Italy yourself originally. You're settled here now. What's that like in your family? You know, you get another generation. You know, how much of that culture do you have them plug into? How do you sort that out?
It's not that easy to sort out. My wife and I have both moved from Italy 10 years ago, and now we have a son who was born in the U.S., so he's the first American citizen in the family. So there's always a back and forth between identities, and obviously we feel Italian, but we feel American at the same time, and I wouldn't call it a struggle. It's more trying to figure it out day by day, and I'm sure this happens in families all throughout the country, where this matter of identity, this question of identity comes up constantly, and it's a developing conversation. And I think it's important to have that conversation, and I hope Idea Boston as a festival can offer a platform where this conversation can take place.
Well, most of us in America have ancestors who come from other parts of the world where there are also complications around identity. One example of this from Italy, and this is one of the topics at the festival, is Jewish writers in Italy. Tell me a little bit about that lineup.
Right, so we have Professor Nancy Horowitz of Boston University and Sergio Parusa, professor at Wellesley. And they have both dealt with Italian Jewish writers for most of their academic careers. And what they'll be looking at is the identity of being a Jewish writer in Italy, because there were periods where it wasn't that easy. Obviously, as we know, the whole period that ran up to World War II during the fascist regime, we have Primo Levy as a figure of authoritative figure of Italian literature who wrote wonderful books, but who had a very hard life. And then we have, we'll be talking about Natalia Ginsburg, we'll be talking about many other Jewish writers, because I think that's a very important aspect of, especially 20th century Italian literature that isn't very often talked about.
Well, you mentioned Primo Levi. One of the things I loved about him was that he reprocesses Dante Alighieri. His dad loves prosciutto. I mean, how does that happen?
Well, it goes back to the flexibility of being Italian. Many times, I think Italians are appreciated for being flexible on many aspects, and this comes also when it comes to culture that is applied. Speaking of Primo Levi, even at the bookstore, not only Primo Levi is very popular, but even authors like Calvino or Dante himself. I mean, we sell copies of Dante constantly. And we also have a panel actually on why the Italian classics, including Calvino, Dante, and many others in between, are still relevant today. And that is a panel that is co-organized by Boston College.
Well, Calvino's famous book, Invisible Cities, was on the reading list for Imagine Boston 2030. I love his definition of a classic. He says, what is it, again, it means that this is a book who's still being reinterpreted. We still find new meanings.
Right, right. And that actually happens, I think, with great books, with great literature. That happens constantly. You pick up a book and it'll always be able to talk to you no matter when it was written and when you are reading it.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Nicola Orichuia from I Am Books. Nicola, some other things in this festival that people, I guess, would expect if it's an Italian culture festival. You have some of it about opera and maybe some film, too?
Yes, we have several aspects that are tied to Italian culture, but might not be strictly tied to literature. For example, Friday evening, November 2nd, we have a theater play. It's Oh These Ghosts, written by Edoardo De Filippo, which was one of the greatest theater writers of the 20th century in Italy. We do have a workshop on Italian through opera. And then we also have, for example, another special guest that we have is going to be Tommy De Paola, the famous children's author. And the last thing I would like to mention is also the silent film screening, which one might say, oh, but a silent film, what's interesting about that? Well, first of all, it's a masterpiece of the Italian silent film era, 1915 Assunta Spina, but we have two musicians that will be playing live the soundtrack, mandolin and guitar, because they rewrote it recently.
And one other topic is about autism, too, right?
Yes, this is a topic that's very dear to me because the two women who will be presenting this topic are author Marina Viola, who lives in Cambridge. She's written a book about her son and the relationship she has with her son, who is autistic, who's about 21 years old now. And so she'll be dealing more with like the emotional and the relationship aspect of having a autistic child. And then on the other side we have Michela Fagiolini, who is a researcher at Children's Hospital who deals with things like autism. And so it'll be interesting to have this conversation between a parent and a researcher. And so we'll try to delve into the world of autism, for example, which I am not very expert about. But I think we have to also kind of look into some myths. For example, in Italy, as here in the United States, there's this myth that vaccines, for example, might produce autism. So we want to try to understand why that is a myth and try to also clear out that anything that's around it.
Finally, we should mention people want to see even more details. You've got a website where they can go find it?
Absolutely. We have, the website is ideaboston.com, and people can find information about the panels, about all the events. They can buy the tickets there. Most of the events have a ticket. It's just $5 to $10 per ticket, so definitely affordable.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Nicola Orichuia.